I'm the operations manager for Boise Hunter Homes. Moved here in 2015, and my primary project was Harris North. The first time I saw the site, it looked much like you see here in this photo. The grading was underway, and my other task, other than running this community, was to create a semi-custom production vertical operation for Boise Hunter Homes, with the idea of us having base plans and standard features, and allowing our homeowners and prospective buyers to come into our communities and get a good understanding of the product offerings, the area in which the community is located, and basically able to give people marketing materials and information so they could make a decision and have a full understanding of what they were purchasing and where it was. In my past, I came from North Texas, and so this was my first opportunity to be in a wildland interface area. I'm a flatlander, so it was the first time that I was around a lot of mountains and in an area where there was a fire risk. I was in urban areas before, and it was something that I was not familiar with. So some of what we'll touch on today is how those types of processes and having a new community that's established really lends itself to be able to set proper expectations for the homeowners that are going to live in that community based upon the product and some of the risks and restrictions and obligations they have living in a Firewise community and in a wildland urban interface area. So yeah, basically a couple bullet points on Harris North. The entire site was 145 acres, for which we will have in the end 173 dwelling units. Those dwelling units will be placed on 59 of the 145 acres. And as I mentioned, we were in Wildland Urban Interface Zone A. I do understand in talking to Jerry this week, that classification has a new name, which we'll touch on a little bit later. If I can remember correctly, it was the Urban Interface or IR1 or IR4, but it'll be in here, and we'll touch on that, and it'll be part of the maintenance phase that we'll discuss. So basically, how I've broken this down is we were a new community, and so as we moved forward with the basic the planning phase of the community, there are certain restrictions that are placed upon us as we go through our preliminary plat application with the city. So I've broken this into basically three separate areas: planning, implementation, and maintenance. Planning we'll hop onto now, which is going to be how we understand what we're able to do with the actual community. So as we purchased the property and had it in due diligence, we went through a process of submitting a preliminary plat, which basically showed our plan for the lot layout and how it would be situated on this piece of property. And from that, we basically got feedback in a formal staff report from the Boise City Planning and Zoning. That report touches on many things. There was a geotechnical review because we're in the foothills. Public Works had commentary as far as how the drainage would work, sewer, irrigation, and street light locations and types. And there are also commentary from Boise Parks and Recs, ACHD, the school district, and Valley Transit. So basically all the departments at the city are able to provide commentary, and that allows us to understand how we're able to develop the site and the land use that we can have within the site. So from that information, we're able to create then the next step for us, which was the CC&Rs. And this is basically taking that information and able to move it forward into a document that we would share with our prospective homeowners as we work through the purchase and sell of a home in the community in our implementation phase. And the last part of the planning phase, which was noted in our CC&Rs, was to be a Firewise recognized community with the overall goal to increase the ignition resistance within the community. And that's going to be done by the homeowners and their private property, and also by the HOA, and maintaining the common areas that are part of the property that abut up to the wildlands. So basically, we're going to focus much more on the fire for this than all the other departments. But through the Boise City Planning and Zoning staff report, we did get fire comments that we needed to comply with the International Fire Code. The community has one main access, and I'll back up a slide here to show you. The main entry point into Harris North is this road here. And then on the backside of the community, we have a secondary emergency access, which I'll show you later, that wraps around the backside of the community in this location. And then there's also, based upon the staff report and some of the information that is in our fire safety plan, which we'll touch on in a minute, fire suppression is required in certain locations in the community due to the time that it would take to access those areas and some of the restrictions or roundabouts in the way that we would have to get to that area quickly if there was a fire. And then any homes that we build that were over 5,000 total square footage, which includes all the garages, patios, and porches, those homes would require fire suppression regardless of where they were in the community, just due to the size of the actual structure. And these will all noted in part of the requirements that are in the Harris Ranch North Wildland Urban Interface Safety Plan that was developed from the staff report. So this, the Wildland Interface, the WUI Fire Safety Plan for Harris North, I broke down the primary categories that are within that safety plan, which would be in any community safety plan, where the first step is to understand what the potential is for wildfire and how big that risk is. And that's going to be based upon the topography, the climate in the region, and then the fuel sources that are existing in the wildland space that's around the community. And then the next part of that would be looking at the development on the preliminary plat and how that lays out, and what the concerns are as far as the ability to get to and fight a fire, whether it be a residence fire or a wildland fire that is in the area. And this will, it kind of segues into some of the comments that you get back from the other city departments, as far as ACHD, trying to regulate on-street parking to make sure that we have wide enough streets with parking to make sure that fire trucks can get through and be able to set up properly in the case of a fire, location of fire hydrants, and the amount of the gallons per minute of water that would be needed in an emergency. And in Harris North, we have our own water supply, or a water tank at the top of the community, and the design of that water tank and the amount of water that it holds is predicated upon these types of requirements that were a part of the Boise City Council Planning and Zoning staff report. And so that kind of gets us through the area around the community, how the community is developed. And then we look at a little bit closer into each property and how we're going to construct those homes and how those homes will be landscaped. And we'll touch on those here in a minute. And then in the end, we have the last area, which is going to be the common areas that are in between the private properties and the actual wildland, and how the HOA can maintain those. And being a new community that has no existing homes, no existing landscape, it really allows us to have the efficiency to set proper expectations with the future homeowners and describe all of the things that are the requirements that we have to do. So there's a very clear understanding of what the buyer is purchasing and why it is being constructed or installed the way it is. So this here, I mentioned we have some areas of Harris North that have a specific restriction based upon the location that requires fire suppression. So I mentioned earlier, this is a little bit better map to see. This was our main road into the community. And as you come up a little bit higher, it obviously takes quite a bit of time, more time to get into these areas. So you'll see all the lots that I have noted in red are the lots that do require fire suppression regardless of size of the home. So we have some here. These are the highest lots in the community. And the next phase that we're just about to go into, which is here, takes a little bit more time to access. And once you get into these areas, you'll notice we have roundabouts in certain spots. And those roundabouts were designed specifically to make sure that fire equipment would be able to get in there and be able to maneuver in a way to fight any fires efficiently. The other notable of this slide, you'll see the black line that runs around the community. This is the actual property line of Harris North. So within the spaces that you see in here are common areas, and these common areas are maintained by the HOA to ensure the space that is behind the private properties is maintained in a way to remove any fuel reduction. And we'll get into that a little bit later with the action plan. The last thing I would note is this line here is our emergency access road. So this is the road that is only used for emergencies. It's a gravel road the majority of the way. And one of the comments we got back from Boise Fire during planning, our planning staff report, was there's a specific grade that's a little bit steeper here, which we paved to ensure over time that road stays in good shape in case there ever was a fire. There wouldn't be any issues gaining access through that emergency access road. So much of the information that was provided in the staff report, I mentioned the next step was our community CC&Rs. I won't go through and read all of this information, but the idea is as the staff report is completed and we are procuring our CC&Rs, we wanted to make sure that the information and the restrictions and obligations that we have are in the CC&Rs, as this is going to be a document that is provided to the homeowners and will live with the community throughout. And it's something the homeowners association can fall back on as a guide as new homeowners come into the neighborhood, and the builder will complete a home, will close the home with the correct materials on the house and the landscaping installed properly. But this is a guide for post-closing improvements too, as buyers would like to add more trees in their yard or improve their structure in some way. This helps us ensure that the HOA is approving things that still are within the fire safety plan, and helps educate homeowners that maybe purchased a resale home in our neighborhood and didn't get the full understanding when they actually purchased the property originally. So there are some things in here about how you can use your property, the materials that are allowed, and it also does note that we are going to be a Firewise community with a fire safety plan, and defines some of the information that we'll touch on a little bit later. And these are the comments from, or the verbiage from our original CC&Rs. Over time, our fire safety plan may change, or it has changed, and landscaping requirements, we can expand upon and give more information to our homeowners as to what is allowed and not allowed. Lastly, this touches on community fee assessments. Firewise changed a few years ago how they view assessments. And so that kind of gets us into the maintenance phase of the presentation and how we see Harris North continuing as things change and evolve, and homeowners have questions. We try to make sure that we're updating the CCNRs and are able to have a document that is out there that they can look at and review and gain an understanding of what is allowable and basically why we're doing the things we're doing to be a Firewise community. The other thing I'd touch on here is as the declarant of the community, we have control of the CCNRs. So one of the huge efficiencies that I've seen, in this process is as things change and evolve, and Harris North has grown to 100 homeowners. We have the ability to go back and update the CCNRs and make them as clear as possible ahead of us turning over the homeowners association to the homeowners once we complete the development. It's our obligation to make sure we leave this community in a way that is where it's very clear on what the expectations are of the association, so the community can thrive in the future. Because any changes to CCNRs once the homeowners association is turned over is very cumbersome. You have to have a majority vote of homeowners, and it's just a much more lengthy process. And this is something that we find is very beneficial. I can only imagine doing a Firewise safety plan and trying to add some of this information to an existing community where you have homeowners and private properties that maybe don't comply or have large trees. It can become a very cumbersome process to be able to do that. So this here is our WUI home ignition zone, and this was noted in our Harris North wildfire safety plan. And so this is a fairly simple graphic that spells out some of the information as to where we can plant landscaping. So our zone 1 is going to be 30 feet around the structure, with a fuel-free zone within that, which is 4 feet around the home, where we don't want to have anything other than low growth, fire resistant landscaping, which we have some detail that we'll look at here in a few minutes. Zone 2 is a little bit farther out, where you can have some trees and larger landscaping, still fire resistant, but this would be more of your yard space that's a little bit away from a home in Harris North. And then the plus 100 feet is going to fall into most of our common area. Some homes will have a little bit of space in there. And so this was the initial information that was part of the safety plan, which helped us develop our standard landscape plans, and something that we would discuss and describe to our homeowners as they were coming in to purchase a home. So we were able to have some of that basic knowledge and sharing of information, whether it be the house, the landscaping, the community setup, as we move forward with a purchase and sell agreement, and making sure we set proper expectations for the future homeowners. And then in 2016, we had the Table Rock fire. So much of the things that we have spoke about at this point happened in 2015. And at this point, Harris North, we hadn't constructed or completed any homes in the neighborhood, but we had a fire. And so this was an aerial that was taken a few days later, and it shows in a sense how Harris North was designed in a way that really did help protect the future residents of future structures that are in this community from the potential of a wildfire. So here you can see the emergency access road that runs behind the community. Boise Fire was able to access, was part of a trail at that point, but they were able to access this area and then go up the Homestead Trail to cut a fire line, which was able to stop the fire from heading further east. And we were obviously mass graded here, so there's a bunch of dirt, which is fairly fire resistant. But it also shows the way the roads come in. So we have a road here, and then the road turns. There's only residents on the left side of the road, and so we basically have a little bit of a fire break, which is the road, and then our common area that is maintained along here. The only homes that abut directly up against the wildland are going to be these lots along the north side of the road, which is Trapper Place. And we designed these lots to be significantly deeper than all of the other lots in the community. And those homes are built, the same size homes built near the streets. And so these lots had 80 to 100-foot backyards, which added additional protection from a wildfire. On the upside of the emergency access road, this is all common area here, which is able to be maintained by the HOA, which allows us as a HOA to protect these homes along this side. And the other notable is the proximity of this community and how we're developing it with the proper fire resistant landscaping and building materials, acts as a protection and a buffer for, an existing community down here, Spring Creek, which does have quite a bit of mature landscaping and trees. So it shows, and I know it has been a discussion in the Barber Valley of, how communities work together to have overall fire safety plans. And this shows an example, a real life example of how one community can benefit another. So now we'll hop into the implementation phase, and I've spoken a little bit about this through the planning phase. The fire safety plan called out specific types of building materials that we needed to use. So as a home builder, as we get ready to go to market with our homes that we're going to be building, we're contracting our vendors to have certain material types. And some of those materials cost more money, but the idea as a home builder, you're trying to understand what your costs are, so you can go to market with a product that you're going to have a good business plan on, and also make sure you're meeting all the specific requirements that you need to for the municipality. The landscape design and plant materials, based upon the zones that we had discussed a minute ago, we were able to work with our landscape designers to create standard landscape plans per house type, to make sure that we're describing to the buyers up front what was allowable as far as landscaping goes. And then also marketing materials. So if a prospective homeowner came into our model home and was inquiring about purchasing a home, we'd be able to hand them pricing, information about the community, HOA dues, and also Firewise handouts. We made it a point to brand some of our marketing material with Firewise to make sure it was a point of discussion when we were doing the initial sell. And then also in every home that we sell, buyers do acknowledge the CC&Rs, and as we have discussed, much of that information does get touched on with our sales representatives, and is acknowledged by the customer as they move forward with the purchase. And then lastly, the implementation phase is getting the Firewise accreditation and creating a Firewise action plan. This action plan we'll touch on in a little bit, but it's part of the HOA's responsibilities. It's part of the homeowners association dues, and it's an integral part of how we are a Firewise community and a fire safe community. So as far as building materials, there are a number of things that we do on the exterior of the homes to ensure that if a fire were to reach the structure, we'll be in good shape and we'll be as protected as we can. So I'll briefly touch on some of these materials, which are all exterior materials, but the first would be roof coverings. We have to do a non-combustible Class A shingle with a specific type of underlayment to ensure that if fire does get on the roof, it would not be able to burn through. Traditional methods of roofing even include wood shake, which obviously wouldn't be, I haven't seen that here since I've been in Boise, but in my past life, know of existing communities that where a home caught fire and many of the homes in the area had wood shake shingles. They all burnt. The few that had asphalt shingles did not. So the idea, fire people, I feel like there is not a great understanding as we've sold a lot of homes in Harris North. People that are coming to this area have not been around fire areas and don't understand how fires actually move through based upon topography and fuel sources. So some of these things, as we would describe to our homeowners, if they wanted a specific type or look of thing and we had to tell them that wasn't available, it was because of some of these restrictions to make sure we're developing a safe structure and safe community. The next item is eave protection. So this is the little overhang areas that you can see here. As a fire could potentially blow up this hill, it could blow up against and into the eaves. So those eaves are protected either with a sheetrock and a hardy board soffit to ensure that there's no way that fire could penetrate through that area of the home. And then gutters and downspouts, non-combustible. I don't believe I've ever seen a gutter or downspout that wasn't metal. But again, it's something that's on the exterior of the home that if it could catch fire, there is a potential that could push underneath the shingles and underlayment and potentially cause a fire as it hits the roof decking. And then any appendages or projections. So this would be cedar details, small items that kind of create an elevation styling. These all have to have a 1 hour fire resistance rating. So an example would be a heavy timber. You couldn't do a small 2x4 type of decorative timber. It had to be 6 inches by 8 inches, have enough mass to it that it could not catch fire and burn rapidly. And then the other exterior element would be your windows and doors. And these windows and doors are a multi-pane glass, if the doors have any glass in them, and they have a 20-minute fire rating. And the last item, which is very important, is vent locations. So traditional building would have vents that help the attic breathe in the underside of the soffits. As I was describing earlier, if fire was blowing up and into this soffit, if there was an opening there, very easily that fire would be pulled into your attic space, which is full of combustible material, and could absolutely start your home on fire from the inside. And all of these items, as far as portraying to our consumers or our customers, are part of a standard specification sheet that's part of our purchase and sell agreement. So the buyers are able to review this with our sales teams, have an understanding of how the home will be constructed, and many of these items that we touch on are there because of the planning and zoning, our fire safety plan requirements, and it's something that we're able to work through and describe to the buyer. And all of these things that we're discussing go back to the community restrictions and the reasons that we're doing that to help prevent any type of fire. Here are our this will put us into the landscaping portion. So I mentioned we have standard landscape plans, which I'll show you in just a second, but we also offer three or four different plant catalogs that have fire resistive native type of plants and trees that we do allow. So part of our process is a buyer is able to meet with our landscape designer. They get to choose a package that they like and the plantings that they like. So they do have flexibility in choosing the materials that will be in their property. And these are some of the examples that we have. This is a standard landscape plan. So taking the fire safety plan, zones 1, 2, and 3, we were able to take our standard floor plans, put them on a standard size lot. And this is also something that we provide to the customers before they purchase, so they can have an understanding of how they can landscape their property. The homes in Harris North are built fairly close together, in close proximity. And as you could imagine, people would like to enjoy their view, but then also have privacy in their rear yards. So the initial thought for most prospective buyers or homeowners is, I would like to do a lot of landscaping and make it very, very lush. And what that actually causes is fire laddering. And so we work through that and talk through that portion up front, as far as what is an allowable type of screening for a home. But this here would give a potential customer a good understanding of what would be allowable on a standard size lot. And I know you probably can't read any of this, but this also shows a fence. We showed fencing on these. It's not an included feature, but we wanted to disclose to the buyers that there is a specific type of fencing that's called out in the CC&Rs, which is going to be a wrought iron fencing, which also helps prevent any fire laddering or any fire that would move rapidly towards the structures of the home. And next, I mentioned this earlier, we have documents, information, marketing materials when you walk into our sales offices that we provide potential customers. And here you can see I mentioned the branding. We always put this on there to make sure that it was a conversation piece. And it basically just gives a little bit of information about the community, that we are in a wildland area, and is a good point of conversation. And the next document is our fire suppression document. And so part of selling homes in Harris North, I mentioned that we were a semi custom production vertical operation there. The idea is a buyer could come in and choose a floor plan, we'll call it a 1-story floor plan. They also have the opportunity to purchase options that make the home deeper or make the home wider and change the footprint of that structure. So as we work through a purchase and sell agreement, we would be discussing the options that the buyer has to purchase on whichever lot they had chosen. And based upon the options that they chose, it could trigger the need for fire suppression. If they added enough square footage to the home, fire suppression would be required. That one was a little bit easier to explain. We created this document basically to show that the depth of the home, if the home got deep enough, it would also require fire suppression. And this is based upon the fire fighting equipment that we have, and the restrictions as far as how far a fire hose can be pulled to the rear of a property to fight a fire in around the entire structure. The marketing team did a great job finding these fire trucks. So the last part of the implementation phase was becoming a Firewise USA community. And so that was a task that I worked with Jerry on. And so the steps for that, there's an application process that we filled out. And the first on-site step was to do a wildfire risk assessment. So we did a community-wide walkthrough. We identified any areas that there were concerns. And being that we were a new community, it was much easier to have a good understanding of what we needed to do in the future, not so much of what needed to be removed from the past as far as existing trees, and you know, existing potential hazards, as we were basically mostly dirt lots. And as I've described, we're building the houses within the fire codes that we had, and the landscaping that we were placing was new landscaping at that point, and within the requirements. So this was looking at our common areas, where fires may come from, and we created a list of suggested improvements, and basically turned that information into our action plan. And it says, you know, these are living documents, and they are things that, as time goes on and the community grows, may need to be revised. And then basically, as I mentioned, that segued us into our action plan, which is, how are we going to maintain the community, and what are we going to do to ensure not only the homeowners that purchase through us, that we disclose some of this, and we talked through what Firewise was, um, but people will live in their homes for a few years and sell them, and then there'll be a resale homeowner that moves in that didn't come through our model homes, and we weren't able to spend time with to talk through some of these things. So you know, the idea is to continually educate the homeowners and make sure that the HOA and the homeowners are both doing their part to have a fire safe community. And these action plans, as I mentioned, you know, they will need to be updated from time to time as the environment around us changes and the community comes to full development. So this is a picture of our fuel reduction map. So when Jerry and I met, we went around all the roads. We looked at areas that we would need to have fuel reduction in. And so from the top down, you know, we have residences that run along here that do back up to a common area that is a slope and is wildland. And so the green areas that you see around are going to be areas where we go in and we do a fuel reduction, and we basically remove any grasses and any brushes that have grown up in those spaces. And we are doing that bi-yearly right now. And that process basically happens in May, and then in late June or July. And being that the HOA, this is one of their responsibilities. Again, we contract vendors, and we have done it in a way that we contract them for a specific time. So we have a trigger that says it's time to do this, because we know when the grasses are tall. And then if necessary, if we have a very, very wet year, we may have to do it again. So we have a little bit of flexibility in when we actually pull the trigger on having that maintenance done. And that is part of the HOA's responsibility to watch. And obviously the HOA is the declarant right now. So we go out and look, and we'll schedule that vendor to be out there when it's needed. The other areas, the yellow, are going to be along the roadways. So I was mentioning, we were looking at the Table Rock fire photo before, you know, these areas burnt down to the road, and the road does create a little bit of a fire break. But we also will go at least 10 feet off of these areas and remove any fuel that's in those areas too, just to give us a little bit larger buffer. Flat area here that tends to grow a little bit more than others, so we make sure that we get a little bit wider here, and we clean up all of these areas. And this is heaven forbid somebody throws out a cigarette or something along those lines. We do have a fire break that would help protect us. And then the orange areas are actually retention ponds or detention ponds within the community. ACHD in our staff report and our final community maintenance report requires that these are cleaned out, which will have weeds that grow in them. Obviously, any water will collect in these areas, so we clean those out, and also that reduces fuel as well. This shows a photo of our action plan in comparison to the Table Rock fire. And I probably spoke through in our last slide how that actually functioned before homes were here. But again, the road that kind of comes up is this road here. So as you can see, we burnt to that portion. And as we completed our action plan, we do clean up some of this area even farther on the road to create a larger buffer. I mentioned when we looked at this slide previous, these homes here were the deeper lots, which you can see here. We had one home built at the time that this photo was taken, and we still maintain a 30-foot buffer off the rear of those properties as well. And our emergency access road that comes around the backside, it actually also acts as a little bit of a fire break, which you can see a part of that road here. And then we will maintain a 30-foot swath below those residences as well. So there is some fuel that's in between them, but we still are creating the buffer away from the residences, and hopefully it doesn't jump that road. But if it does, we'd be in good shape. And here you can see it actually, maybe that little dark spot there, it may have jumped the road a little bit, but the fire department was able to get in here, have a quick access, and able to fight that fire and stop it from getting completely black, as you see in some of these areas here, completely burnt. So the last phase is our maintenance phase. So this is part of the implementation phase was educating prospective buyers and homeowners, and that is also part of the maintenance phase. So I mentioned there would be folks that would come in, and it would be people purchasing a resale property, and so those resale homeowners didn't get the same information and understanding potentially that the buyers that came through our doors did. So as a HOA, that is our main communication for all existing homeowners. And so we'll do a yearly pool party typically, where we'll have Firewise handouts and talk a little bit about Firewise for new people that are coming to the neighborhood. And we also have seasonal newsletters that will go out where we talk about turning your irrigation back on and making sure that you submit any improvements to your house through the HOA, and we touch on some of the issues that we've seen in the past, and making sure that those things are submitted and do follow the CCNRs and the information that's provided in there as far as Firewise landscaping and building improvements. And then we will do, as I mentioned earlier, periodic updates to the CCNRs. This past year, we added additional Firewise guidelines to our CCNRs, which include a little bit more detail as far as hardscapes and landscapes. We have an HOA. We have an HOA manager that drives around to ensure that these items are people are not installing things that we are not aware about. And making sure that landscaping maintenance is being kept. As you can see in this photo here, we planted these bushes. This home had just closed for a new homeowner. They were quite small. They're within the approvable planting materials, but over time, as these plants grow, they may need to be trimmed back. And there's certain guidelines within our CCNRs now that talk about how plants should be maintained as they grow to maturity. We talked about this slide a little bit earlier, and so in Firewise, there is a little bit prettier picture to help homeowners understand what is approvable or what is acceptable. So as we closed our first homes, our first 2 years, we would get requests from to the HOA to add additional landscaping, and we would refer back to the CCNRs as we worked through those. And so we felt it was needed to provide a little bit more information as far as how those things laid out, so a buyer could understand in a little bit clearer picture of what would be an allowable area for certain types of trees, the density of them, and how they could improve their properties and stay within our fire safe restrictions. This is another example of the same from Firewise. I mentioned screening earlier, and homeowners wanting to use landscaping as a screen method. And so this helped us describe in a little bit of a sense what would be an allowable cluster, which really, in the way that our lots are set up, this diagram doesn't show Harris North lots specifically, as they're a little more dense, but it does give a little bit more detail that we're able to talk about with buyers when we are having to deny a request or landscaping. I'm sure I'm covering everything. Sorry, guys, I'm catching up here. So lastly, I pulled this from the Firewise website, but the idea is, as we continue to develop and build out this community, the information that's within Firewise and that we have put into our CCNRs, it really allows us to be able to have an organized goal, have a way that we can work as a community to move forward and basically be able to ensure that we do have peace of mind, that homeowners are all aware, and if they see a neighboring homeowner doing something that's not okay, they can reach out to the HOA to make sure that gets taken care of. But it also helps build a community. As Boise continues to grow, people are coming from all different areas of the United States and even overseas, and so this is a common risk that all homeowners share within Harris North. And through pool parties and some of our community events, it's a commonality that we all share, and it's something that we're able to talk about and be on the same team about. And I think that's it. And kind of the other benefits that I've touched on is being a new community and having this be a focus and a responsibility for the developer and the HOA up front. It allows us to create the entire community and the entire expectation and the entire process of building the homes. Whereas one day when Boise Hunter Home steps away from Harris North and turns it over to the HOA, we'll feel like it's been set up in a way that is very clear, and it should be a fire safe community for years to come. And then my last slide, I pulled this from Firewise as well. It shows a list of the communities that are Firewise recognized as of last year. So it's a growing list. I know our Dry Creek community that is off of 55 has also recently become a Firewise community as that continues to grow into the foothills. So it's good to see there's a lot out. And these communities, I looked at a few of these. There's so many different types of communities that are Firewise communities with different risks and different topographies and different climates, that it truly does take a specific plan and buy-in from the homeowners to be successful.